Probably easy to guess why I'm making this video today. I want to a lot of mixed feelings going on. You know, self-celebratory, cautious, vigilant, but none of them joyous, if you know what I mean. Today at 6 a.m. here in Ireland, most restrictions, including the Vax ID pass, were removed. So I can go to a pub, a coffee shop, a restaurant, again, without having to show I've been vaccinated. Is that a victory? Well, it's a victory for us that have refused the needlecraft, because we've held out. What we had, we held. And we managed to get through the last 2 years despite ferocious coercion, bullying, and social limitations and personal limitations that we've held out. They didn't get us. They did not get us. Okay, we decided, and we somehow all over the place. We decided to hold out, and we got there. We got there in the end. We got at the end. So the primary objective of not having our DNA, RNA affected, we've achieved that objective. And we basically stopped the Germans at Stalingrad. Okay, they'll use that analogy again. That doesn't mean we've won the war. We still got to go on to Berlin, but we've turned the corner, absolutely. So in terms of those of us who said, look, no way am I taking that thing, back in early 2020, you should feel good, feel proud, feel good, feel, you know, a sense of relief that you achieved it. But then, you know, I'm seeing posts on social media saying the first thing that happens, I'm going to go down to an early house and get drunk. You know, that's not the time for this, really. I have no intention of going. I mean, I really miss cafes and coffee shops and sitting there with a book reading, and that's something I missed terribly. And yeah, I'll go back to that, but not today, and maybe not tomorrow. We're not normies. We don't do what the regular Irish normies did, and the NCPs and the sheeple did back when they were given their freedom, the last Freedom Day. They were all on social media having photographs of themselves with a rake of pints in front of them going like this. We're not like that. We've got dignity, we've got self-respect, and we're living in a parallel reality. And that's really what this video is about. Now, I just want to talk about why the UK and Ireland have dropped most restrictions, including the Vax ID pass. Now, I'm not Mr. Super Positive, although I always maintain that you have that song in your heart and aim with a positive approach. And I'm not Mr. Super Negative, though I'm always like, just wait and see, just be cautious, okay? Now, you could put this in a super positive light and say, well, not even a super positive light, in a positive light and say, well, they gave up. They gave up. They knew that those of us who held out, that didn't take the needlecraft, that we were starting to influence more and more people, and that's definitely very, very true. That's definitely true. And and how we influenced them was they were still getting the ping pong and had their needlecraft, including their foghorn, leghorn, and we weren't getting it, and we didn't have the needlecraft, and that was opening their eyes up. That was opening their eyes up, and they also tried to start a witch hunt. Leo Varadkar, especially here in Ireland, tried to start a witch hunt when he went on CNN and said that cases are being caused by people who are not jabbed. It's a despicable, disgusting thing he did, and they were hoping for like literally pitchforks and the lynch mobs coming around our houses and burning us and stuff like that. That didn't happen. So that worried them. There's no doubt about that. That concerned them. They'd lost control of the normies completely, not completely, but they'd lost complete control of them. They didn't have all the control what they needed. So there is a case to be made that the establishment in the UK and Ireland threw the towel in. But then there's still that lingering thing is like, why is it full steam ahead in Austria? Why is it still full steam ahead in many German lands and states? Why is it still full steam ahead in Quebec? Why is it full steam ahead in Victoria? Why is it full steam ahead in New Zealand? And we're getting this. And that's bothers me. That's the positive one. Moving to the cynical one, not the negative one, the cynical one, remember? That they've deliberately given people in the UK and Ireland their freedom. So we can all mingle, have a great time, and then a new variant comes along and they turn around and say, well, look what happened. The new variant came out and you all infected one another. We have to have lockdowns as part of our lives. When you had freedom, it didn't work. Now, I think that's not a real possibility that they would do that. But it's very important that we talk about this on forums such as this and amongst ourselves, and especially our normie friends, as I say this to them. Oh, I don't trust them. They could, on one level, they could be doing this so we all get infected with a new variant, and then they could use that as an excuse to what they really want to do. And, so that's a very important one for you to put out there to your normie friends. Is to say, just like, so if it does happen again, we're ahead of them in the culture war. And remember, this is the main reason that we formed a parallel society, and it's been very successful, is we're ultimately fighting a culture war. We're fighting it with refusal of medical treatments. We're fighting it with saying if we can't go to the pub because we don't have those medical treatments, so be it. We are fighting it with memes. We are fighting it with information. We are fighting it with, especially we have to fight it with dignity. They have been so unsuccessful in portraying us as tinfoil hat loony right wingers, mainly because it was so absurd, because there's as many black people and Jewish people and people of color in this parallel society as there are white folks. We don't have, I don't have a racial conscience. I have friends of every race and religion, and I don't even think of their skin. They don't even, I think of their national, it's the weirdest thing. Like, I have black friends who are English, and I have black friends who are Americans, and I don't think of them as, I think of them as English and American. It's like, it's weird, it's like I don't think of them, I think of them as like English girls or American fellas. I don't think of them as skin color, and I think that's how we are in a parallel society. We don't operate. See, this is why this is why the establishment is obsessed with race, and the wokes are obsessed with race, because they're the true racists. They really are hung up on skin color. We don't care. We look directly for the soul of the person, and their character, and we're probably exactly what Martin Luther King said, where we judge a person on the character, the content of his character, and not the color of his skin. And we in the parallel society and the tribes, that's exactly what we do. And the so-called progressives and the wokies and the liberals and the normies, the first thing they think about is skin color. So we're actually more in touch with what that movement was about back in the day. But we have to. We have to be, look, the way look, okay, it's great, it's brilliant, okay, I can go into Bewley's in Dublin today, and get a lovely cake and pastry without having to show a pass on a phone. I can go to Slattery's pub at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, where they have a full restaurant open, and have a pint with a lovely cooked breakfast. I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I only wanted the option to do it. You understand what I mean? At that, and there were three there was three objectives that I had in this whole thing from the very beginning. Number one was absolute refusal of being used as a lab rat by big pharma or an experimental medical treatment. That was absolutely number one above anything else, either through coercion or mandatory. There was no way those motherfuckers were going to ever stick a needle in me. We got that. Number two was the removal of the ID pass. I know it's a more complicated thing regarding international travel, but in terms of living in this country that our founding fathers fought as a democracy and a republic 100 years ago, that was repugnant to me. And I'm not even a nationalist or or patriotic. So that was number two to me, the removal of the vaccine ID pass, the digital one. And thirdly, the face masks. Now, we've got the face mask one is still a lingering issue, mainly because I think the government are catering to the hypochondriacs who still, you're talking about people who wear these masks while on Zoom calls. You're dealing with, we'll talk about that, what that means later on, but they're dealing with that. So we got two out of three ain't bad. Poor Meatloaf died yesterday. So two out of three ain't bad, but it's not great either. Okay, it's not perfect. And the next objective is to safeguard the first two that we got, the right and ability to refuse the needlecraft and to refuse the vaccine and to continue about our daily lives without the vaccine pass within our nations. And then the next two, international travel without Vax ID and removal of face mask, all face masks being totally voluntary. That's okay. You can be voluntary. You want to wear one, go ahead. If you don't, you don't know. And so vigilance to maintain the first two, but continuing in the parallel society to remove the other two. Because these other two are like, they're the state and the bureaucracies still having a foot within inside ourselves. Now remember, governments don't grant you rights. Your rights are inalienable. You are born with inalienable rights. Just like the US Constitution. You see, this is one of the great tragedies of America at the moment. The US Constitution and the founding fathers of the United States, and particularly the authors of the Bill of Rights, created the best compromise. Even they knew it. Even they knew, and they knew that the democracy was flawed, and even a republic was a difficult thing. But they did the best they could do of any country to deliver a constitution that could never be. You can't have an ideal constitution, but you can do something that can protect, that can work. And they created this beautiful system, and it's heartbreaking to see the United States under a dying Alzheimer's patient and a cackling hag in the president and vice presidency there, demolishing the groundwork laid down by the likes of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Samuel Adams and the rest of them, Benjamin Franklin. And the only thing keeping them from pure totalitarianism in the US is the size and diversity of the nation. And although European nations can be quite large, like Germany and Spain and Italy and France, and diverse as well, but in America it's really it's the Second Amendment and having guns. That's what's really keeping them safe from full-on totalitarian, because there's a real viciousness from the liberal side of things, from the Clinton end of things within the American body politic, that would actually, if it was unleashed and allowed to flourish, would be far more. It would be like something from the Bolsheviks in Russia. It comes from the same place. You have to look at what's going on in Quebec, to see how a society that was once very, troublesome to the establishment, the Quebecois, and you'd often hear things like saying, I don't like French Canadians. They're not nice people. They're not very friendly." Well, I mean, I've been to Montreal and Quebec a few times, and I've never had any problems there. I don't know if it's because they like Irish people more. They seem to have an affinity with their Irish and Scottish identity as much as their French one. but I personally, but I've heard other people, not from Ireland, but from like America, and having a hard time there. It's never happened to me, but I don't have a problem with people who have an FU mentality to defending their culture, and they seem to have bottled it really badly, and that I find it quite frightening, because I was kind of like, I used to look to the Quebec guys as like what the Irish kind of used to be as well. Now, so we're not don't celebrate today. I mean, celebrate the fact that you got through this without. That's brilliant. That's wonderful. That's great, and I will be celebrating it later on. But not. I'm not going to go celebrate about going down to the pub and have and uploading a profile picture to Facebook of me with a bunch of pints and a rake of ale or stout in front of me, going like that. Like a sea of lager in pint glasses. I'm not doing that. That's undignified. That's profane. I was lying in bed last night and I could not sleep. There was a terrible. No, I wouldn't say terrible. There was a funny old atmosphere floating around the country last night, and I mean, I was just thinking about people, and in a compassionate way, not on slagging them off. Imagine that you were a normie that was sentient or semi-sentient, and you reluctantly got the booster because of your job, or your boss was an asshole, was kept saying, hey, jammed you, this kind of thing, and there's there's going to be cutbacks here, people might have to go, and you're pressured into it that way. Or there's a new position coming up in marketing for a vice president, and I think you'd be the right man. Oh, great, thank you. By the way, did you get all your jabs? I'm talking about those kinds of people that were forced into it that way. Or once you work with helping the sick and the elderly, I have all the compassion in the world for them, and had from the very start. And the lying in bed last night at say 5 a.m. in Ireland, and thinking, in 1 hour's time I will be in no better position than all the people who remained purebloods, and I have this shit flow, and they might have gone online and did some research, as opposed to trusting the science because Jimmy Kimmel told them. They go online, or Jimmy Carr, they go online and they're like, fuck, what's waiting for me down the road? If I just had held out for another couple of weeks and not got the foghorn leghorn, I probably would have been in the clear regarding future health issues. And mark my word, there are sentient and semi-sentient normies out there who are not mindless followers, who were coerced into this, and they're probably having mental health issues right now about what have I put into my body. So that's why I'm not celebrating it. It's not it's a victory for you on a personal level, but don't gloat and don't jump up and down and get a rake of pints and have your picture, because that's saying to thank you, government, look what this is like calling politicians by their first name. Oh, look, government, look what you've done for me, you've given me my freedom. The governments don't give you your freedom. Your rights are inalienable. Your rights are inalienable. My God, it's like 500 people just watching this right now, and we the tribes, and this is the message of the video, that the parallel society continues regardless. I think look, the last year has been very difficult for many of us. Hasn't been for me. I haven't been too bad. I have to say, like, my relatives and my friends who did get the jab didn't slag me off or anything like that. I don't think they would. I think they've always known I was an oddball anyway, and I'm a maverick anyway, and I do my own thing. But I didn't get anything like that. So I didn't have. I had friends who had terrible things done to them by their normie friends and families, and they have earned a medal. They have been brave. They've been pulled through this without being coerced. But it's not like, yay, because the damage has been done, and we'll never, the greatest education means never having to see the world in the same way ever again, and that includes the people that you loved, or you may still love them, have changed around you. So we've also learned from the parallel society that we don't need to we don't need it. We're fine. We're our own parallel society. We can make our own living. If my friends and I would meet up and do things together, and outside that kind of like state sanctioned, uh, you know, entertainment, recreational hospitality industry. And I found ways to get to England using the ferry from Belfast without having to have a pass. And I discovered that I love traveling by ship, and it was a gift. When I think from now on, even if I could, when I am able to fly again, and they drop the international thing for the fax ID for flying, I'm still going to go to Belfast and take the overnight ferry to Liverpool because uh, I just discovered that I don't have to take half my clothes off anymore in airport terminals. I don't have to stand in security lines and be treated like a terrorist and be stuck on a Ryanair or Aer Lingus or Norwegian Air or any Lufthansa, anyone's flight. And I just show up at the ferry terminal at 9 o'clock, get my cabin, have a shower, go to bed, and wake up at 6 a.m. the next morning in Liverpool. And it's just it's. I discovered I love that. I love sleeping on ships, and I love so that was a gift for me. Unless I have to go to outside outside Britain and Ireland, I'm perfectly happy now taking the ferries, and they're not that much more expensive. When you add all the different costs up, they're not that much more expensive, and there's something, especially at this, I'm not like 20 anymore, so I would find stress in airports quite fatigue. After you pass 50, you don't have, although I feel like I have tons of energy at the moment. I don't know why, I just do. And that's another thing. All my friends and all the people who didn't take needlecraft, they all look amazing. They all look years younger than the average person. They have a kinetic energy and a sparkle about them that's quite beautiful. So that thing, but I just like, flying ever since 9/11, flying has become an increasingly obnoxious drag and only really worth it if you're going to places where there's no other choice. Well, I have a choice now, and I've discovered that. I've discovered ferries, and I'm going to take ferries from now on. And that was a parallel society moment for me. It was discovering that. I've discovered lots of things in a parallel society. So, the parallel society continues and advances regardless. And there's a reason for this. We're not only involved in okay, we took up arms, so to speak, because of the possibility of forced, mandated needlecraft, and we took up the mantle to fight against that. But those of us who did it many of us had already been long, at least for a decade, involved in a culture war. And that culture war is still coming. The woke culture are the SS of the establishment. And they've created a situation where like, I'm not going to speak for other countries, but just to talk about Ireland, right? Essentially, Ireland is a one party state now, where the two there is no opposition here. I'm not going to go into details, but the reason why Christian Morris has made fantastic videos about it, he's the man to go. He's the go-to guy for that. So go to Christian Morris and Odyssey now and subscribe. And he's the man, the go-to man. But you'll find that there's very similar parallels in your own country, or if you live in Quebec or you live in Victoria, in a big state that's as bigger than a European country, and. Here, and I see it, and it's happening in the US too. I see it all the time. What the government does is it's changing the culture by means of giving a platform and a mandate to people with personality disorders and psychotics, and using this to further their agendas. I'll give you an example. We, you know, we in their parallel society in 30 years' time, those of us who are still here and have kids or grandkids, will be telling their grandkids as the grandkids' jaws are hanging open in disbelief, that people used to wear face masks on Zoom calls because they were afraid of getting COVID, or they were afraid of seeing people's faces, traumatized by it, because it triggered them. Now, in any other phase of human history, those people would have been laughed at and mocked at by comedians. But because they're useful for culture change, and through especially things like NGOs and quangos that are not part of the democratic system, rather than these people saying, will you go fuck off with your fucking mask on Zoom? What's wrong with you? These types coerce and bully through the company, and particularly through the IT industry, bully the rest of the staff to wearing masks to cater to their mental illness and psychiatric issues and personality disorders. So, for instance, you may have a company where someone goes, Hi, this is Marcel in IT in help desk. We have a Zoom call coming up, and I'm really scared because they're going to have people's faces there, and they're not wearing masks. And I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And in any other company, the boss would have said, in another time, the boss would have said, we've employed that guy Marcel. We've employed. He's straight out of a mental hospital. We got to get rid of him. But nowadays, the boss and calls up the staff and says, oh guys, you really got to wear a mask because Marcel is afraid. And if you don't wear the mask, guys, hey, you'll be fired. And that's how government has, in the culture war, has done this. And we have the situation where I've nothing against trans adults. If a person wants to change their gender, I'm all for free will. That's their own business. That's what they want to do. But they're now doing it to encourage kids to do it. And this is all part of the sexualization of children. Now, here in Ireland, it's now, it's a difficult thing for an Irish person to admit. But we do have a problem with paedophilia, and particularly the molesting of young boys in this country. And the Catholic Church basically proved that there is a disturbingly, not high, but it's a disturbingly above average percentage of Irish males who are sexually attracted to prepubescent boys. And you get this in other cultures as well, of course. It's not just here, but it does exist in this country, and I'm only speaking for my own country. And in the past, the priesthood was where they sought refuge, okay? Well, we now have a situation in Ireland where they're frantically, through the culture change woke agenda, and this includes things such as recognizing overseas marriages, i.e. child brides from the Middle East, that they're slowly sexualizing children to legalize pedophilia, so these perverts who molest young boys won't be criminally prosecuted anymore. And they have some including the Minister for Children, a guy here called Roderick O'Gorman, who is I find him a very unsettling individual. And he has a close association with pederast activist Peter Tatchell in the UK. Now, when I say we're involved in a culture war, I really mean we're involved in a culture war. It's not gay people or drag queens or adult trans people who are really causing this. It's an element of support among the woke establishment who's doing this. For example, the drag queen thing, okay? I used to love drag queens, okay? Because they were talented. I grew up with the likes of Danny LaRue, Paul O'Grady, Lily Savage, Mr. Pussy here in Ireland. And these were men who dressed up in drag, but they were very talented. They could sing songs, they could tell very jokes, they were entertainers in the truest sense. And when you read interviews with these guys or watched interviews with these guys on TV, they were not only very witty and funny, but they were intelligent, erudite men. Right, now to show you how that's been changed, that was how society was. You see, I'm not a conservative. I'm not a conservative. I'm definitely in the middle. I'm kind of a libertarian bordering on anarchist. I'd probably more closer to an anarchist than I would be a libertarian, but I'm in that, you know what I'm saying? I'm in that field. So you have a situation there where we have an individual called Panty Bliss. Now, Panty Bliss is held up as this great national treasure, this drag queen. And you know what his only ability is? He has one and only ability. He's a bloke who wears clothes, women's clothes. So if I was to tart myself up tonight in women's clothes, I would have no less talent or no more talent than Panty Bliss. Panty Bliss is not famous because he's a great speaker, a great character, he's good at telling jokes, he can sing songs, he can entertain. No, Panty Bliss is famous for no other reason than he wears a chick's clothes. And you'll find this equilibrium of mediocrity spread throughout all of society. And the culture war is about creating mediocrity. And mediocrity is the totalitarian steel fist behind the velvet glove. If you look at so many of the young guys today who are calling themselves trans, they're, in 90% of cases I can see, they're just uninteresting, unattractive, mediocre, talentless white boys who are looking for attention. And it's an easy way for some white boy who has no talent, no agenda, no talent, no ability, no personality, no nothing, no good looks, to get attention, to be stunning and brave. It's again, but it'd be okay if it was just them themselves doing it, but it's part of a cultural shift mandated from the globalists. Again, it is the steel fist of mediocrity behind the velvet glove of liberalism and progressiveness. And is echoed all through society. And they want to make us as mediocre as possible. And that's what's happening. And bringing us back to the culture war in terms of the needlecraft and what's happening today in Ireland. Yes, we did it. We did. Now, when I say we won, I don't mean we defeated them. I mean we won the battle to protect our bodily autonomy from an experimental RNA treatment. We won that, okay? The culture war is about finding like-minded souls, and we will find as many gay men and minorities and even drag queens and even trans people who will join us in this battle. It's happening already against the amplification and the weaponization of mediocrity in order to create an equilibrium of blah for all of us to hold us down. You see, it even started with things like music. You know, 30 years ago, the music scene in Ireland was incredible. There were endless venues and there were loads of amazing bands who never made it out of Ireland, but it didn't matter, it was great. You know, what do we have now? Boy bands. And you'll find that's the same. I was talking to a friend in Quebec, in Montreal, was a bit of booming music scene at one time. Even Sligo Town had a fantastic music scene back in there in the 80s and 90s. It's gone now. I'm not putting down the boy bands or anything like that. I'm just saying that's what's happened. The Louis Walshes, the Simon Cowells. The equilibrium of mediocrity began. Then, the point where you have Adele, I heard her, couldn't believe it like a few months ago. She was clearly singing off key in a hit single. They don't even care anymore. You know, all autotune is enough. And it's not a generational thing, because within the parallel society, you get everyone from, 19 all the way up to 90, from all social classes, all backgrounds. And it's a beautiful thing when we meet. Now, when I say parallel society, of course, I'm not talking about living separate and completely separate lives. We're not Amish, or we're not, that kind of thing. That's not a very good thing too in this way as well. We have one foot in regular society and one foot in the alternative society, living a parallel society. And what's happened in Ireland this morning has by no means stopping me from making these videos, because I have people I care about in Quebec, in Melbourne, in Vienna, and in Berlin, and it's still full steam ahead there. So no one gets left behind on my watch anywhere. And I still have friends in the Pacific Northwest of the US. It's just still, the totalitarians still flying there. And you'll see the commonality in a lot of this is people who work in IT are the oppressors. And the IT industry is a very sinister, it is a very sinister thing. Okay, they're the constant, in many ways, them and the mass media are the concentration camp guards of the new global concentration camp. And human beings are funny that way. They, so the parallel society continues. I'm not going to say, okay, guys, this is the end of the videos. I'm not making them anymore. I'm going to continue to make them because you're not going to get rid of me. You're not, I'm not, listen to me carefully, Irish government bureaucrats, mainstream media. You're dealing with people like me and of the tribe who are far beyond wearing a Celtic jersey, sitting behind a rake of pints going, hey, we got our freedom today. You never met motherfuckers like us. And we're here till the day we die on your ass and not thanking you for giving back the rights that were granted to us by the gods or the creator. And you remember that. As for the rest of us, well done. Go home and prepare to march to Berlin. Sanguine noses. Love you all.